Hi everyone, my name is Junon. I have a health science background and I'm the author of the book Truth and Empathy: How to Find Your Soulmate. I'm very excited. It's a book that is very dear and near to my heart, and I trust that this information will help people find a compatible romantic partner. But it's the type of book that you can use for many other areas of life. So if you're dealing with people, and most people actually do, whether you are a parent, a teacher, you are an employer trying to determine who's best for what type of task or job. If you are, let's say, someone who deals with the public, let's say you're doing policies for a large population, or I think that essentially if you have to interact with another person and you want to be able to determine what is the best approach and how to get the best out of this person, this book can help you do that. So, chapter number 2, it is about diving deeper into the different functions. So, the title of this chapter is Truth and Empathy. So, we're going to dive deeper into what these terms mean and how this can help you determine your personality type and also know if another person is the same type as you. Okay, so again, I have some notes here, so because I want to make sure that I cover all these points and not leave anything out. What do I mean by truth? And many people will say that there are different ways of looking at the world and that there's no such thing as absolute truth. If you read the book Power versus Sword by David Hawkins, turns out, yes, there's such a thing as absolute truth, and your nervous system knows. So your body knows when you're telling the whole truth, but even if consciously you might think something different, and you can also explore muscle testing that can actually help you. But I find that people who are energy empaths are able to capture that because if something is truthful, it has a particular vibration. When something is untrue or negative, it has a negative effect on the body. And that's why it's difficult to full energy empath because this vibration is given off, even if the person is trying to come across as positive and very uplifting and things short. No, it's very difficult to change your core because you would have to rewire someone's whole brain for them to start giving off a different type of vibration or subtle energy. So the when it comes to the title Truth and Empathy, when trying to determine a person's essence, there are two variables: their level of truth and their level of empathy. The level of truth has to do with how slow a person's brain waves are, the dominant brain waves. So a person can have either beta, alpha, or theta brainwave dominance. Most people, about 85% of the population, have a beta brainwave dominance. And even that can be separate too. So some people can have a slow beta. Slow beta is from 14 to 12 cycles per second. And beta itself starts at 15 up in terms of how fast their brainwaves are. So in other words, we're talking like someone whose brainwaves are 16 cycles per second. Alpha is for people who are more in terms of empathy, I would be the intuitives. In the Truth and Empathy questionnaire, they are called the conceptualist. So you can be um, logical conceptualist, so more that sort of like the Einstein, Isaac Newton type, or you can be the empathic um, conceptualist, would be fall into, let's say, the Mother Teresa, uh, Muhammad Gandhi, or Jesus Christ. So this is the other category. Whereas most people would be in the low beta or slow beta or beta type, so 85% of the population. Now, depending on how slow your brainwaves are, you can perceive a different level of reality. So most people are focused on the five senses. Then you can go slower and you can see more in terms of the ideas. So it's more of a intellectual understanding of life. So something subtler. And then if you go further, in terms of how the subtlety of this reality, you get into the spiritual. The spiritual is really about the essence. So when someone can actually perceive the vibration, be able to accurately uh, know which vibration and how it relates to a personality type or how it would if the person will behave long term. That's when you get into the subtle reality of life. And so when someone talks about spirituality, unless they're able to perceive this subtle energy, it's only theory. They don't really know what's going on. So when you and David Hawkins talks about that in terms of what you see with the five senses are the result, or it is sort of the expression of subtle energy. So if you want to change how something appears to the five senses, you have to change the subtle energy behind it. So the subtle energy is what gives rise to what we see with the five senses. And often when you look at the world is that they're trying to change what we perceive with the five senses, and they keep on failing. So in other words, let's say if you look at war, okay, something is going on and something's not working out. Let's send some troops there. Let's send the army and try to control with force what really is the result of what happened in the subtle energy. If you were to change, let's say, someone's level of awareness, their behavior would automatically change and we don't have to use force because that would be sort of the consequence of having a high level of awareness, and it's their subtle energy that would actually indicate that this person has truly changed. So truth is relates to that the book. So it's a subjective truth, but it's a truth that can be objectively measured, because that's what I wanted to do in the book instead of just having these esoteric and concept that floats. How does it show in the body? How does it show in their behavior, and how also in terms of their health and so forth? So this is a new way of understanding these spiritual concepts, because then it makes it tangible for most people. Now, when it comes to empathy, it has to do with if a person has more of a masculine or feminine energy. So, if you look at the brain, is the person mostly left brain, so that would be masculine energy, or right brain, which would be feminine energy. And depending if you're more one, because it's a gradation, so it's not like one or the other. So you could be feminine or very feminine. You could be to have a masculine or very masculine, and that's why. Let's see if I listen to enough of dating experts or relationship, let's say advisors or counselors, whatever it is that they put all men in one category and all women in another category. Say, oh, men are like this or women are like this. No, really, you should say masculine energy is a certain way and feminine energy. A person could be an heterosexual man but has very feminine energy in terms of how their level of empathy. And empathy has to do with how you can synchronize your nervous system to somebody else. So the ability to perceive that subtle energy coming out of the person. So the person is very empathic. It's not they're trying to feel how you feel, they just do. And what is kind of interesting about these two variables of truth and empathy is that you can find a person who has high intuition, so in other words, very much of a conceptualist, but who has low empathy. So a classic case would be Napoleon Bonaparte. You can't be someone who is very empathic and sending people to their death, or being dismembered, disfigured by a wound, inflicted like that. So in other words, you realize that different depending on the job that is required to do, you have to send the right person, and you can find a person who has high empathy, so very feminine type of energy, but has low intuition, or not very in terms of they're not a conceptualist. So you'll see that, let's say, in the truth and empathy questionnaire would be the administrators, feminine administrators. So they are very much in touch with their feelings and so forth, but they tend to be literal in terms of their understanding the world. So they understand the five senses mostly, and actually they tend to be traditional or very sort of conservative in their outlook on life. So that can be quite confusing for people, because most people think that if you're very empathic, then you are automatically very intuitive, or you can understand subtleties about, let's say, life or the energy. It's not the way it works. Obviously, if someone is both highly empathic and highly in terms of have intuition or have very slow brain waves, then these two, when they're combined, they enhance each other. So the person is both even more empathic and also is more able to perceive subtle energy, or that spiritual energy, or that spiritual sort of world. So that can be quite confusing for most people. Now, what happens is that people will say, "Well, I have femininity, but I definitely can access my masculine side in terms of being logical, driven, and wanting results, being assertive." When I say to people, it's not that someone who has mostly femininity cannot access their masculine side, or someone who's, let's say, a masculine energy cannot access their feminine side. It has to do with what increases your energy. So, one quick test, and the rule of thumb that I would use is the 80-20. So, I would say to a person, imagine, let's say, if you're feminine energy, and I want you for the next, let's say, couple of days, only make decisions based on logic. Remove the emotional, let's say, undertone of any situation. Almost look at people as objects instead of people who have emotions, feelings, and someone you can really empathize with, and see how it feels. Most people will say, if they're feminine energy, that it feels they feel a drop in energy just thinking about it. Same thing with masculine energy. If you say to someone who's very masculine, I want you to really empathize with that person, and whenever you make a decision, even if it's illogical, you go along with it because you don't want to hurt their feelings, or you want to bond with them. They will feel a drop in energy if they were to do that 80% of the time. So it's the type of sort of a test that can tell you where you feel most at home. So again, it's not because you cannot access your, feminine or masculine side. Is where you get energized. And the same thing in terms of, let's say someone is an introvert versus extrovert. And we talk about this in chapter number 2. Is that uh, in extroverted person, if you were to tell, especially here during the COVID situation, okay, 80% of the time I want you to be alone, and only 20% of the time you could spend with others. They they could become depressed just the thought of it. Same thing with if you're an introvert. If you're an introvert and I tell you you have to spend 80% of the time with people, this is draining for them. So if you follow the energy, it will tell you who you are and where you feel most at home and where you can be at your best. And the other aspect when it comes to personality in the book, we talk about orderly versus spontaneous. So you can have two individuals who are very much at the same level of, when in terms of truth. So let's say, like, you have two empaths. Let's say both are into spirituality, meaning, so they in terms of their level of truth, it's a high level of truth that they function at, and also they're very empathic. But it doesn't mean that they are going to get along, because they might have a different organizational style. So one might be orderly and the other one might be spontaneous. And when you talk about romantic relationships, when a close relationship, it has to do with logistics. You know, did you pay the bill? Can you pick me up at a certain time? Did you get a chance to finish this project? And if you are with a person who doesn't have the same organization style as yourself, especially if there are extremes, they're going to have issues. And that's why, again, this book, I find that it gives a different message than most people, is that people believe that, well, if you are both, let's say, empaths or both rationalists, well, it's uh, everything is great. There are no issues. No, it has to be that specific. But the good news is that there are 16 personality types, and you'll probably meet many people. Let's say, especially if you are uh, a realist, you will find people that can fit that profile. That you're not the only one. In other words, and when we talk about uh, people who are looking for their soulmates, this word is often used because they say that, well, that's the ultimate person they're looking for. Well, it turns out that depending on your personality type, you use the word soulmate, but you don't mean the same thing. For example, if you are an optimist, you are probably looking for a playmate, someone to have fun with, someone to be part of different fun activities. If you are irrational, you're probably looking for a mind mate. If you are an empath, you're looking for a soulmate. And if you're an administrator, you're looking for a helpmate. So, because of these different terms, what we realize is that unless you understand personality types, although you might say, well, I have good intentions, I'm going to, give this person, what I think they would like. No, you might be giving someone or offering some certain, like, maybe help or show different sides of yourself that are not what the person is looking for. And an extreme version would be, let's say, someone who's looking for really a playmate, who is trying to have a relationship with someone who's a helpmate. Conflict. They literally are looking for the exact opposite. One is about duty and tradition, and the other person, it's about freedom and movement. That's why these two groups usually don't get along, although they are both realist in terms of, if you look at their brainwaves, they're both beta, but they are at the opposite ends of what they're looking for in a partner. So that's very important, and this is something that is not often mentioned when we look at different websites or books or talk shows about what they're looking for. It's not true that the person's all looking for someone to really bind with, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and we're like one. No, some people feel suffocated by this type of relationship, and also that influences their love languages. So the five love languages, like acts of service, quality time, words of affirmation, physical touch, and receiving gifts. Well, depending on the type of mate that you're looking for, well, the way the person is going to show their love and appreciation will be different, and you might not respond favorably to what they're offering you. So that's why it's so important to understand these personality types and understand yourself, and be truthful. I think that the people, especially when we talk about, well, 85% of the population is a particular or realist, and then 15% are conceptualists. Most people want to believe that they are conceptualists. Well, you are doing yourself a disservice, because ultimately you will, if you try to mate with someone who's not your type, you will run probably into problems and very soon. So then, to minimize these issues, it's better, I said, well, to stick with your own. I think it's very important to have acquaintances, co-workers, it's even in terms of when you classmates, people around it are from different personality types, because they all bring something important to the table. They are natural experts in a particular field, and they will enrich your life. But when it comes to someone to share your life, someone to merge your life with, it's better to be with someone who is the same personality type or something or type that is similar to yours. So this is a summary of some of the ideas in the second chapter of the book. Thank you for watching. I know these videos are longer than I usually do, but I think it's important to actually touch on these points. And if you enjoy the video, please click on the like button and subscribe to our channel. Take care.